Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
Today we're talking about safety in Venezuela. That's one of the main concerns about internationals regarding Venezuela. And it's a legitimate grievance that international has about Venezuelans. They see a lot of things on the news and they make this picture that it ain't. Venezuela is not the safest place on the earth, I have to say, and I have to be responsible for that. However, Venezuela is safer than you might think, and not only that, according to some recent data, Venezuela is way safer than you are thinking. So we are going to review the numbers, the data, and actually compare it to the rest of the world, and you see that Venezuela is, a very safe place after all, compared to other places, of course. So we're going to review some data from the Venezuelan Observatory of Violence. And remember, this is not a government agency. The data that you got from the government is not trustworthy. And also you have some international data that's also not accurate because they don't know the situation. They usually don't have boots on the ground. So I love this data. It's from an NGO. It has nothing to do with the government, so the numbers are not skewed. So let's review. So let's start with the homicide rate. In Venezuela, occurred a little bit more of 9,000 violent deaths on the year 2022. That gives you an homicide rate of 35 per 100,000 people. So that rate is not as low as you want it. However, it's very low compared to the rate that we had just a decade ago. That rate was around 80 to 90 homicides per 100,000 people. So that was way high. However, that rate went way down, so it's just half. In some cases, a third. That's what we used to have just a few years ago. So Venezuela has become a safer place on the past few years. Also, if we digest, and just nitpick these numbers, 2,300 homicides were committed by common citizens. 1,200 homicides were committed by police detention. So it was a mismanagement of the police dealing with criminals and such. And 5,800 deaths that are under investigation. And also you have to add 1,300 disappearances and missing people cases that you have in Venezuela. So the main takeaway here is, I have two takeaways and beyond the data. First, most of the homicides occur on low-end territories, usually criminals fighting against criminals, criminal gangs fighting with other criminal gangs, or fighting against the local police, or local police fighting with other local police officers. So it's a tricky situation. So most of the Venezuelan people, I'm talking, the vast majority, are not involved in such situations. So if you are in a middle-class neighborhood or a middle-class city, you're going to be pretty much fine. That's the main takeaway. The second takeaway, and I have to say, it's in some shape or form, the local authorities, low-end authorities. I'm not talking the government or something like that. The low-end authorities, regular police officers, are kind of involved with some things, and yeah, it's something I have to mention. However, for the most part, it's not like you're going to come here and you want to witness an homicide every now and then. That's not going to happen unless you're involved in such things, and most likely you won't. So we're talking right now about the 5 states with the most homicides or the higher homicide rate. The first one is the Distrito Capital, that's where Caracas is. Caracas has a lot of safe areas, so don't think Caracas is a dangerous place. If you don't know what you do in Caracas, it's very unsafe. So, number one. Number two is La Guaira. Same thing. You have a bunch of bad neighborhoods, and most of the homicides are over there. The homicide rate is 50 per 100,000. Number three is Miranda. Miranda is close to the capital, and in some parts is part of the capital. It has a homicide rate of 48 per 100,000. Number four is Bolivar State. Bolivar State is a big state with population density pretty low, and most of the homicides occur on, let's say, lower end neighborhoods and these remote small towns. The homicide rate is 42 per 100,000. And the fifth most insecure state is Guárico State on the high plains of Venezuela. It's on the dead center of Venezuela, south center. It has a homicide rate of 41 per 100,000. Now, the five safest states in Venezuela are, number one is Lara State. It's on the northwestern side of the country. It has a homicide rate of 16 per 100,000. Number two is Cojedes. It's on the central west side of the country. 18 homicides per 100,000. Number three is Nueva Esparta, is where Margarita Island is. 21 per 100,000. Of course, it's a low populated state. Number four is Yaracuy. It has a rate of 23 homicides per 100,000. And number five is Táchira State. I love Táchira, by the way. It's on the western side of the country. It shares the border with Colombia and has an homicide rate of 23 per 100,000. So according to Statista, the homicide rate in Venezuela on the previous years, on year 2020 it was 41 per 100,000. 2019 it was 45 per 100,000. 2018, 60 per 100,000, and the year before 81,000. So you see a drop over there, and go on, so on, so on. In 2014, you had a 90 per 100,000 homicide rate. So the trend is trending down. So Venezuela is becoming way safer within time. Now let's compare the homicide rate against other nations in Latin America and the world overall. So Jamaica has a homicide rate of 45,000, so Venezuela is safer. Trinidad and Tobago has a homicide rate of 39 per 100,000, Venezuela still lower than that. El Salvador is been dropping down, actually, way down since, Bukele took office. Still has a homicide rate of 37 per 100,000. It has something around 100 just a few years ago, so very good by El Salvador people. Still, Venezuela is safer with 35. Honduras, also a country that has been dropping, right now is 36 per 100,000, so Honduras is safer, so good for Honduras. Still, Venezuela is safer. Mexico has a homicide rate of 29 per 100,000, so it's a little bit safer than Venezuela, but not by that much. So if you're in Mexico, you're going to be good here. So let's continue. Colombia, and that surprised me. I thought it was worse, but Colombia has a homicide rate of 23 per 100,000. So it's safer than not only Venezuela, but also Mexico. I thought Colombia was a little bit more unsafe than Mexico. Brazil, 21 per 100,000. And the main favorite is United States. Has a homicide rate of 7 per 100,000. Of course, United States is a developed nation. Still not as safe as you might think. Now let's compare Venezuela with major Latin American cities. Tijuana, TJ, has a homicide rate of 134 homicides per 100,000 people. That means Venezuela, overall, I'm not talking about the safest cities in Venezuela, just Venezuela on average is 4 times safer than Tijuana. And I know gringos, I know you like Tijuana. I like Tijuana as well. Ciudad Juárez, 104 homicides per 100,000. Venezuela on average is 3 times safer than Ciudad Juárez. Acapulco is a nice touristic Mexican city. The homicide rate is 71 per 100,000. So Venezuela on average is twice as safe as Acapulco. So if you've been in Acapulco and you feel safe in Acapulco, you're going to feel safe here. Also, Ensenada, Puerto Ensenada on Mexico, 52 homicides per 100,000. Venezuela is way safer than that. Cali on Colombia. I love Cali. I love caleños and caleñas. And they have a homicide rate of 45 per 100,000. So Venezuela on average is safer than Cali. And this is a surprise even for me. Guadalajara, GLD, has an homicide rate of 38 homicides per 100,000. So Venezuela on average is way safer than Guadalajara. So if you feel safe in Guadalajara, you're going to feel safe here in Venezuela, especially if you go to a safe city. And for closing this data, I'm going to talk about cities that actually Venezuela is safer than some U.S. cities. So St. Louis has a homicide rate of 65 homicides per 100,000 people. That means that Venezuela is twice as safe as St. Louis on the United States. Let's continue. Baltimore has an homicide rate of 58 per 100,000. So Venezuela is almost twice as safe as Baltimore, that is close to the capital of the United States. And Venezuela is safer than that. Imagine that. And the other city have Detroit. Detroit has an homicide rate of 41 homicides per 100,000 people. So Venezuela is safer than Detroit. Actually, I thought Detroit was going to be higher. It's going to be the highest on this list. So if reviewing those numbers, Venezuela is way safer than you might think. Actually, I got surprised when I reviewed this data. Venezuela is not the safest place on earth, I have to say, of course. However, it's way safer than many places in not only Latin America, but also on the United States as well. So if that is your main concern about Venezuela, there's not much to have to worry about.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again. Have a nice day.